Hello everyone, we are on chapter 7 and we're on paragraph 7. So let's get started. It follows from the concept of the act of knowing as we have defined it that one cannot speak of limits to knowledge. Knowing is not a concern of the world in general, but an affair which man must settle for himself. Things demand no explanation. They exist and act on one another according to laws which can be discovered through thinking. They exist in indivisible unity with these laws. Our egohood confronts them, grasping at first only that part of them we have called percepts. Within our egohood, however, lies the power to discover the other part of the reality as well. Only when the egohood has taken the two elements of reality which are indivisibly united in the world and has combined them also for itself, is our thirst for knowledge satisfied. The eye has then arrived at the reality once more. And I summarized paragraph as follows. Things demand no explanation, and our thirst for knowledge is satisfied when the eye has taken the two elements of reality, percept and concept, which are united in the world, but appears as separate at first, and then combines them together. So I find this paragraph is sort of brings up an interesting point, because he's talking about the act of knowing as something that is a very proactive activity. It's not that the world cares about knowing itself. It's individuals who care. It is something that we must settle for ourselves, and the questions that we come up with when we're perceiving the world, I mean, those are questions that arise for us and that we must settle for ourselves. I find it sort of an empowering concept. And he also says things demand no explanation, and that's true, because a tree doesn't demand that we know what it's made out of and how it grows leaves and whatnot. I mean, these things, it shows that we are active participants in the search for knowledge, and we're not just passively sitting in the world, because we do have this curiosity about things, and that's what motivates us for the search for knowledge. And that to me is a very active searching for knowledge is a very active activity, which Steiner seems to be pointing out. And it says here, within our egohood, however, lies the power to discover the other part of the reality as well. So it's also pointing out that within our own thinking, within ourselves, we can, make something of these percepts that we gather, and we can formulate concepts. So it's, it is very empowering what his philosophy is talking about. I'm going to move on to paragraph 8. Thus, the conditions necessary for an act of knowledge to take place are there through the eye and for the eye. The eye sets itself the problems of knowledge, and moreover it takes them from an element that is absolutely clear and transparent in itself, the element of thinking. If we set ourselves questions which we cannot answer, it must be because the content of the questions is not in all respects clear and distinct. It is not the world which sets us the questions, but we ourselves. And paragraph 8 is summarized as follows. It is the eye that sets the problems of knowledge and not of the world. And again, he's just pointing out that an act of knowledge takes place through our eye, through our individual ego, and for the eye, for our own individual ego. The search for knowledge isn't something we're doing, to make the world happy. It is to satisfy a longing deep within ourselves. And what else does he point out here? If we have questions that we have of the world that seem like we can't answer them, it's because the questions we are asking aren't really clear and distinct, and it's not us, it's not the world, like he says, that sets the questions. Trees don't say, hey, try and figure out how I make sap. That doesn't work that way. It's we form the questions. So again, he's making this concept of the act of knowing a very proactive activity, because thinking requires us to be engaged. Knowing the world requires us to be engaged. We're not just passive individuals in this world. We're here to be active. And that's what he's pointing out in this whole quest for knowledge that we have. And that's what he's just basically saying here. It's we have these questions, these problems, and you know, it's because we come up with them. It's not the world demands anything from us. You know, it's just there. You know, it's us that has these inquiries of things. So I'm going to move on to paragraph 9. I can imagine that it would be quite impossible for me to answer a question which I happened to find written down somewhere without knowing the sphere from which the content of the question was taken. And the summary for 9 is, to answer questions, it is necessary to know the sphere from which the content of the question was taken. Okay, so in paragraph 9, it will make more sense after reading 10, which we probably won't get into today, but it's just basically saying that it helps to know what sphere this question that you come up with is taken from. Is it a concept or is it something you've observed? And that's basically what is in paragraph 9. I think we might have time to cover 10, so why don't we just finish up with 10? In our knowledge, we are concerned with questions which arise for us through the fact that a sphere of percepts, conditioned by place, time, and our subjective organization, is confronted by a sphere of concepts pointed to the totality of the universe. My task consists in reconciling these two spheres, with both of which I am well acquainted. Here one cannot speak of a limit to knowledge. It may be that, at any particular moment, this or that remains unexplained, because through our places in life, we are prevented from perceiving the things involved. What is not found today, however, may be found tomorrow. The limits due to these causes are only transitory and can be overcome by the progress of perception and thinking. So, the summary for 10 is, my task is to reconcile these two spheres as questions. I'll start again. My task is to reconcile the two spheres as questions arise when my sphere of percepts, which is dependent on place, time, and my organization, confronts a sphere of concepts pointing to the totality of the universe. One cannot speak of limits, as what is not found today can be found tomorrow. Again, I find paragraph 10 is a very optimistic paragraph, because he's based, what we can't figure out now, eventually, who knows how long, but eventually we will find the answer. And he believes that the limits are just transitory, and that we can overcome these things that we may not understand now through, the progression of time passing and our perceptions of things. We would attain more percepts, and our thinking would also evolve. And we can see that in our own personal lives, is that, we change how we look at past events based on the percepts that we gather, and the thinking that we do about our past or whatnot. So it does show that at least knowledge that we may not acquire today can be found at a later date, that, through acquiring more percepts and through thinking. And again, the questions that we come up with is also conditioned by our place, time, and our subjective organization, which he has previously mentioned in a few paragraphs back. And so our task as people, is to reconcile these two spheres, which is percept and concept, which he has already discussed already. So that's what he's saying here. And again, he's just saying that there really is no limit to knowledge, because what we know, we may not know today, we can know eventually, and it may not come right away. But I find this is a very hopeful and positive paragraph. So I look forward to seeing you all again next time. Bye.